Hi, hello, I'm Erin, and I'm going to tier rank not all but most of the popular YA series or books from the 2010s because, I was a teenager during the 2010s, so I read most of those series. Not quite all of them. If it's not here, I just, never read it. So yeah, let's get into it. I guess, if you don't know me, hi, I'm Erin. I'm not really a YouTuber, I just like books and talking to myself. I am almost 24. I'm a scientist. I work as an analytical chemist and I live in New England with my cats. Oh, and my boyfriend. But the cats are the more memorable part, the more important part. I do call Toby, my older cat, my soulmate. To be fair, he has been around a lot longer than my boyfriend. He has been in my life since I was 7 years old. My boyfriend, he didn't show up until I was 16. So, by the way, this is just my opinion. If you love any of these books or series that I don't like, that's great. That's what having an opinion is. Probably differs from someone out there. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, our tiers are iconic. So these are books I still love and would recommend today. Then we have acceptable, so things that aren't great, but they're fine. And then mid, which I feel like explains itself. And then side eye and girl, what were you thinking? Mostly at myself for girl, what were you thinking liking and reading these books when you were a teen? Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with a good one. We have The Hunger Games, of course. The 2010s really started off with these supernatural vampire books being really popular. Totally because of Twilight. And then The Hunger Games got really popular, so we had a lot of dystopian books. And then it went on to be fairy tale retellings were the thing. The 2010s was a time for YA. There was a big boom. They were just kind of publishing anything and everything that was popular right then. So yeah, The Hunger Games was not one of those. It had the right to be published. It is iconic. It is still such a really great series that does what I think a dystopian should do and provide a critical commentary or perspective on our society now through the lens of its own narrative. And Suzanne Collins is obviously doing that within her book. Even if you don't want to read it for that reason, it has such a good plot and compelling characters that it makes it good on every front. I even read the prequel finally in November before the movie came out, and at first I didn't want to because I thought it was going to be this President Snow sympathizing origin story, and it was, but it wasn't. You're not supposed to love Snow and feel like, it humanizes him. If anything, it makes him look more insane, which I appreciate. Okay, let's talk about Divergent, because this rode on the Hunger Games' coattails. Oh, we're gonna put it in side eye. I was such a Divergent fan back in middle school, but let's be honest, it was not a good series. It was about as deep as a shallow puddle. When I first read it in middle school, the themes of bravery and selflessness were new to me. So I thought it was pretty hard-hitting, but looking back, it's no, you just hadn't encountered a lot of those themes yet in your reading, so you thought this was doing something and it really wasn't. Okay, we have to talk about some of these Fallen Angel series. We're gonna put both Hush Hush and Fallen in Girl, What Were You Thinking? Because neither of these were good. They had no plot. You could tell every book the authors were just making stuff up as they went, and there was no real arc to the stories. Hush Hush in particular, I feel like nothing happened in that series. Fallen, stuff happened. Did it really make sense? Or was it really good? No, but stuff happened. Hush Hush is literally just a fallen angel backdrop for a teen romance. One of them is a fallen angel. And then Fallen is a little bit more interesting. So our main character, Luce, she is sent to this boarding school for troubled teens with mental health issues, and there's a bunch of fallen angels there, and it's a reincarnated love story. It's not good. I didn't even finish either of these series because they were so boring. It took a lot for me to DNF a book series back in the day, and I didn't finish these, so. What else? We've got to talk about Twilight. I almost want to put this in iconic because it is iconic. It's not good, but it's just, it's so, lovable. I'm gonna put it in mid, okay? I have such a deep love for the movies because they're so funny. If you watch those and you get, you know, a little cocktail and, you know, it's so funny. It really is. Like the lines of the first movie when it's like, you know, how long have you been 17? And it's the skin of a killer, Bella. Like, it's just, it's so good because it isn't good. I ate these up. I'm gonna be real. Breaking Dawn is so bad. Like the creepy baby thing.
Meet sucky sucky now, mommy.
That had no place in a teen vampire love story. It's so bad. I remember going to the movies, seeing Breaking Dawn Part 1 and 2 with my mom. I'm sorry, Mom, because I too was uncomfy. Let's go with another good one, okay? There's not many. Okay, I have The Raven Boys, which I'm gonna put in iconic because I haven't read this in a long time, in like 10 years, but everybody, including myself, adored it. Maggie Stiefvater has a way of writing, and this was just this really whimsical fairy tale-like series set in Virginia, which I moved to Virginia when this series was coming out, so that was fun. And it had the cutest little romance, and it was just such a fun time. I should honestly reread these. It has psychics and magic and ley lines. Iconic. Okie dokie. Okay, let's go with The Fault in Our Stars because I've got to mention John Green here because he like ruled the early to mid 2010s. He was everywhere. I do find his writing and his books to be a bit pretentious and a bit repetitive. They're not really my cup of tea, but like everybody else, I read and cried while reading The Fault in Our Stars. If you don't know, it's a love story between a girl with cancer and a boy who's in remission from cancer, and you will bawl. People are gonna get mad at me. We're gonna put A Court of Thorns and Roses in mid. I'm sorry, but I don't really like this series. It's not a good fantasy series. I will say though, it is highly, highly entertaining. You will have a fun time while reading this book. Will you also probably cringe and roll your eyes? Yes.
Hey Book Talk, these are the cringiest lines that I've read. Prepared to get the ick. Number 1. His growls of pleasure filled the tent, drowning out the distant cries of the injured and dying.
I will remain close by to provide unseen moral support, but I will never help him. I will let harm befall him. I will even let him die.
But it's fun. I mean, there's a reason I've still read this entire series, even though I objectively think it's just not that good. This is a fae series. Honestly, I'm not explaining this. If you don't know what this is about, with it being so popular, you've been living under a rock. Mid because it's fun to read, but it's not going any higher because it's not good. It isn't. And the characters are annoying. And the fairies aren't even fairies. I'm gonna be honest, okay? They're just these immortal, super hot beings with pointy ears. So they're elves, right? That's a Lord of the Rings elf. It's not a fairy. All right, let's do Cinder. Ooh, I'm gonna be nice and put it in mid because I know the Lunar Chronicles are so popular. They are these science fiction fairy tale retellings in space. So Cinder, the first one, is a Cinderella story where Cinder is a cyborg engineer or something like that. I only ever read the first one because I thought the writing was a bit juvenile and the plot was extremely predictable, but I do know that people really liked these. And I didn't hate it, I just didn't have much of an opinion at all. We've got to talk about the Mortal Instruments. I'm putting the Mortal Instruments in side eye. This series is about these Shadowhunters, and they are half angel demon fighters. It's actually a really interesting world with all kinds of creatures, fairies, vampires, werewolves. And in the other series Cassandra Clare has written within this world, she has really fleshed it out and she's gotten better at writing as well. So I think all of her other series are pretty much better than the Mortal Instruments, but to be fair, this is the one that started it all and I ate it up as a middle schooler. But it has to go in side eye because who doesn't side eye the potential, again, spoiler alert, brother-sister love story? Like, that's so... Why are you putting that in a YA series or in any series at all, to be honest? This isn't VC Andrews. We don't need to be doing this. So I only was able to continue reading and enjoy this series as a teenager because I Googled immediately following the first book if they were actually siblings or not, because I could not read the next two books thinking they were actually related while they kissed each other and then felt guilty about it. I couldn't do it. So that's why it's going in side eye. I put the Infernal Devices in... Okay, we're gonna put it in iconic. I was gonna say acceptable, but this series is good. It's set in the same world of Shadowhunters, but during Victorian London. And this has the only love triangle I've ever been able to get behind. It's so good. The plot's cute, the vibes are there. Yeah, and the writing is just leagues above the Mortal Instruments. All right, let's do the other Maggie Stiefvater series, Shiver. We're gonna put this in mid. This is her werewolf series where the werewolves are based on the cycle of seasons rather than the moon. So when it starts to get cold, they turn into wolves and they have to spend the entire winter months until it gets warm as wolves, and then they turn back into humans. And it's a little love story between this girl who is obsessed with the wolves. She was attacked by them as a child, but then saved by one who obviously was the love interest, and it's cute. I really had a soft spot for this when I was like 13, but it's not that great. It's pretty angsty. If we're being honest. Moving on, we're gonna go with a couple dystopian ones. So Legend is just a pretty solid dystopian series. I'm gonna put it in acceptable. This had a decent plot and it was action-packed from what I remember. My boyfriend just recently reread it and he still thought it was good, so that's where we're putting her. But I think we're gonna put Shatter Me in mid because I enjoyed it, but I honestly don't remember much about the plot. I don't think the plot was very interesting. This is a world where this dystopian society exists and people can develop these mutant powers like X-Men. I think the first book is written in an interesting way because our main character, Juliet, is an unreliable narrator. She's been locked up in this high security psych ward essentially because of her power is that if she touches anybody or has human contact, she is torturing them. Like, she causes excruciating pain with her touch. So it's interesting. I don't remember that much about it, so it's mid. Ooh, 13 Reasons Why goes in side eye. Oh, everyone started talking about this once the show came out. I don't like this book or the show. I find it to be a really bad representation of mental illness, and it's kind of disrespectful. You know, it makes the suicide of a young girl into this game and into a blame game. I don't support this story, so. All right, Fangirl goes in acceptable. This is a story about, you know, a girl who goes to college and she's a fangirl. She's a fan fiction writer for this world's version of Harry Potter, and it's cute. It's like a contemporary fiction novel. Everyone was so obsessed with this book, but you know, I liked it. I don't think it's bad. I also don't really think it's that good though. Anna and the French Kiss is going in side-eye. This was a whole like anthology with different characters in the same, I was gonna say world, but like, you know, they all kind of are vaguely connected. It's a little teen romance book in Paris. It's angsty, it's dramatic. I didn't particularly care for it. I didn't like how the romance went, but whatever. It's just kind of cringeworthy. Speaking of cringeworthy, we have the selection, and we're gonna put the selection in mid because while it is bad, and it is a sorry excuse for a dystopian society, it is so funny. This is a dystopian world where America turned into a new country that has a monarchy, and every time a prince or princess needs to get married, they hold a bachelor or bachelorette style reality television tournament to decide their next king or queen who's marrying into the royal family. It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous, but highly, highly entertaining. Ooh. Okay, we have Ruby Red, which honestly, I don't remember that much, but I'm going to put an acceptable because I remember it being at least an interesting time travel series that had, you know, an interesting plot. Shadow and Bone also goes in acceptable because, you know, it's good. Leigh Bardugo has grown so much as a writer since she wrote this series. Six of Crows, which I might have forgotten to put on this list, but Six of Crows goes on iconic because it is actually amazing and it's set in the same world. Shadow and Bone is just clearly her first series. The plot is a little bit weak. The characters aren't very notable except for Nikolai and Zoya. They are great. Overall, I mean, it's interesting, and the world that she's set up and then, you know, expanded further in Six of Crows is really interesting. The Darkest Minds. Ooh, we're gonna put this in mid. It's not good. It's another dystopian trilogy about kids with powers. I liked it back in the day, that's why we're putting it in mid. And fun fact, the author of this series went to my college. She went to the College of William and Mary. So yeah, I mean, obviously not at the same time as me, but I don't know. It's fine. It's not memorable. Graceling I only read recently in the past couple years. I don't know why I didn't read this as a teenager. It's so good. It's this fantasy world where you can develop a grace, so a magical ability that can be literally anything, ranging from I'm really good at swimming to I hit every target with my bow and arrow to the main character who can like kill people by looking at them. So she is the assassin for the king. She doesn't want to, so she's kind of part of this underground resistance thing. It's just a fun, adventurous, solid fantasy story. It's a standalone with some other books in that world. It's good. The ending is a little bit rushed in my opinion, but I like it. I recommend it. Delirium. Let's just get the dystopian books over. I'm gonna put this in girl, what were you thinking? This is about a world or a society where when you turn 18, you are required to have the part of your brain that can experience love removed, so nobody can feel love. Which is such a strange premise. It's so emo and edgy, which is probably why I liked it when I was 13, but that doesn't even really make sense. And the rest of the series, like the second and third books, are plain bad. The plot makes no sense, there's no point. I don't even recommend reading it. Matched I'm gonna put in side-eye because I hardly remember anything about it. But I remember it being okay. It made sense. It had some kind of plot, but it was just another generic dystopian series like all the rest. It wasn't great. Vampire Academy we're putting in side-eye. This is a series where honestly not that much happens for a good 50% of it, but you have the bodyguards for the vampires, and the vampires are born, not made. I think they're actually called vampires with a Y, and they have magical powers. And then we have the Strigoi. That's what they were called. And they are like the bad, evil, typical demonic vampires without souls. And if they bite the vampires, they can then, you know, turn into Strigoi. It's fine. It has like another romance though between a 17-year-old girl and a 20-something-year-old, which is not okay. Like, there is nothing sexy and star-crossed lovers about that. I'm 23 and I don't even want to go near or look at a 17-year-old. Especially not in a romantic capacity. That's illegal and weird. So weird. We also have the Vampire Diaries, which I'm gonna put in side eye. Oh, it should probably go in girl, what were you thinking? But I just liked it. I don't know. It's no, okay, listen, it's not good. We're gonna move it down. It's not a good series. And the last few books were actually written by a ghostwriter against the author's will. So they're especially bad. But this is just another vampire series. I'm putting it here even though it was written, I think, in the 90s because the show was super popular in the 2010s, obviously. And, you know, so I read the books. They're not great. And honestly, just watch the show.
Where's Stefan and his Stefussy? I know what you're doing. Okay? Don't think I don't know what you're doing.
But I was really into vampire supernatural books back then, which is why I liked them. Speaking of supernatural books, we have Alice in Zombieland, which I'm also going to put in Girl, What Were You Thinking? Because this is way too ridiculous for me to have liked so much as a 13-year-old. It's this series about this girl whose whole family dies in a car crash because what teen series doesn't start with their main character being orphaned? And she moves to this new town to live with her grandparents, and she realizes that there's a literal gang of teenagers that hunt down these zombies that she can also see now. And so she joins them. And there's this whole like edgy romance with a bad boy. And the zombies are like spirit zombies that feed on your soul and people can't even see them. They're not physical embodiments. It's kind of weird. I mean, it has an idea. It's not good. I don't know what I was thinking really enjoying this. It's straight up just not good. And the romance was so toxic. It was a bad relationship. Really, it's a wonder I ended up in such a good, normal relationship. Speaking of, we're putting Marked down there too. This was the House of Night series, another vampire series where the teens, you know, you get turned and then you have to go to this school for vampires to learn how to control your magical abilities and be a vampire. This had a romance between a teacher and a student in the first book. Again, what the hell? Like, what is with this? At least in Pretty Little Liars, the books, not the show, the creepy teacher who was dating a student got arrested. But in this book, I remember it being presented as this like taboo, sexy relationship. Like, no, it's just predatory and gross and illegal. Plus, there's a lot of cultural appropriation in this series. The plot doesn't really make any sense and it just went on for way too long. I never even finished it. I read maybe 8 books or something and then I couldn't do it anymore. Okay, Throne of Glass. Throne of Glass goes in mid also. I'm not a big Sarah J. Maas fan. I'm sorry. I don't think she's a very inventive writer. So much of Throne of Glass, especially the second half, really takes a lot from Lord of the Rings, but doesn't do it as well, and from the Prydain Chronicles, which, A Court of Thorns and Roses, that whole cauldron thing was totally ripped off the second book. Second book? I think, yeah. Or anyway, the Prydain Chronicles. That series is amazing. I don't know. I didn't like that. Plus, Throne of Glass, like the first 3 books are totally different from the last few. She totally had this different idea for the world going in and then decided she wanted to write a different kind of story halfway through and changed her existing plot to fit that narrative instead of just writing a different series. I do think the second half is far superior to the first half, but that doesn't mean I think it's great. There are a million other fantasy series I would recommend over Throne of Glass. I'm sorry. Everything. This was really popular when it came out. I'm gonna put this in side eye because I thought the plot twist was stupid. It was just a dumb book. It's about a girl who you know, has to live in a bubble in her house because she's so severely immunocompromised that she can't leave, and there's a romance, and yeah, it's just lame. I don't have anything else to say. Okay, then we have The Summer I Turned Pretty. We're gonna put this in side eye. Like, I understand why people liked this. It's got the teen angsty drama. If you watch the show, honestly, just watch the show. It's better than the books because the books don't have any plot. It's just the main character, Belly, going to the summer house and then having a love triangle with the two boys that are the sons of her mom's best friend and she grew up with.
Conrad, it's always been you! I am feral for you, Connie! I can't live without... Chair. He's gonna break your heart, Belly. I know. That's why it's always been you, Jer. You're not Conrad. But you are a man with a pulse, and that's good enough for me.
Word. Kiss?
Yes.
And the writing is very juvenile. Nothing happens. I don't even know how I read this series because I've read this in the past few years because of the show, and it's just not good. It's not. Especially the last book. Okay, We Were Liars. We Were Liars. Oh, I know some people think it's dumb, but I'm gonna put it in iconic because I still really like it, even though I read it maybe 10 years ago. I'm a sucker for a sad book. I love a sad book. In this book, yeah, it's traumatizing. I like the sort of fairy tale way it was written, and the main character, Cadence, is an unreliable narrator. I enjoyed her trying to figure out what happened in her past because, you know, there's this event that occurred that she can't really remember. I don't want to say much. I don't want to spoil it, but I still like it. I do. It's kind of a contemporary, I don't want to say it's a thriller or anything. It's just this sort of mysterious, contemplative book. Okay. We have The Goddess Test, which I'm also going to put in Girl, What Were You Thinking? This was a retelling of the Persephone and Hades myth for teenagers. And then it was like Twilight, where, spoiler alert, a couple books in, she ends up having a baby, and it's just bad. I think I read the first 3, and then later books were published, but I didn't read the other ones. It's not good. Go read Circe or something instead. Okay, The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer, we're putting in side eye. This book doesn't make any sense. This series, honestly, the plot and magic makes no sense. But I remember kind of enjoying it in a way. It was mysterious and I liked the romance. It was cute. We have another unreliable narrator here. I did read the first 3 books and really enjoyed them, but yeah, they're kind of messy. You know what? No, we're literally gonna have to go get 6 of Crows because I can't leave it off. If I were going to recommend any series from the 2010s, like a YA series, it would be 6 of Crows. It's a heist story and the plot is so much fun. There we are. There we go. I had to put her on here. Here we go. The final ranking. I'm probably missing some, and again, there are some I just didn't read, so I didn't include, but yeah, if I were going to recommend any of them, it would be the ones at the top, especially 6 of Crows, Graceling, and The Hunger Games. So there we have it. That's our tier ranking of most of the 2010s YA books I read. Yeah, don't hate me for ranking some of these super low, but a lot of them were just bad. Like, they're objectively bad, even if I enjoyed reading them 10 years ago. So there you have it. Random girl's opinion on teen books from the last decade. And then let me leave you with this, because I left my last video with a cat. Oh, so let's leave you with another cat. This is Zuko.